Hirsch, ready?
Yes.
Okay. So let me start out with a question, a theoretical question. Let's say a person has like a very unusual experience. Let's say a revelation, epiphany. Comes to him some kind of a like unusual understanding about things, like a lofty insight into what's going on in the world. So you have a lot of stories about this. This happens to people sometimes in various levels. So what would be the normal reaction after a person had that experience? Like he's had this new level of understanding of things, and sort of almost what we call an epiphany. A revelation. So what does he do next? What does the person do with that? What would be the normal thing a person do with like experience of a revolution? Almost some kind of out-of-body experience or something like that. Something that has incredible insights. Where would a person go from there? What do you guys think about that?
You probably share it with somebody.
He would start sharing it, right? So that would be the normal thing. Like nowadays, he'd go on YouTube, and he would start giving it over to the world, his insights. And it would be like, and that's very normal, natural. That makes sense. Like you found some kind of a wisdom and insight into how things work, so you want to share it. Interesting thing is that if you look at these two parshas, the parsha of Parshat Yitro and Parshat Mishpatim, so then you have that experience. You have the experience, the epiphany, the revelation, the biggest one that ever was in history. You have the receiving of the Torah at Har Sinai. Yeah? Like you had this biggest, most outstanding experience in history. You had the Ten Commandments coming out of nowhere, and people realizing that Hashem was speaking to them, the God of the world, the source of everything, was speaking to them, telling them a guidance for how to live. So that's the Ten Commandments. So that was the biggest epiphany in history, the biggest revelation of what life is about. So then what happens after that? So then you get to Parshat Mishpatim. So you would think that Parshat Mishpatim is about the Jewish people going out, explaining to the whole world what we need to know in life. But it doesn't say that. It's the opposite. It's something very different. Actually, the opposite, but something very different. What happens in Parshat Mishpatim?
Tells about the laws.
A bunch of details, many, many laws, almost more than any parsha. One of the most halachot in any parsha in the Torah. So many laws. How many? What'd you say?
37.
That's all? Only 37?
50.
That's a lot. Yeah, a lot.
57.
So you have here like a lot of details, a lot of laws, little laws, bigger laws, all kinds of laws. Laws between people, laws between people and Hashem. So after the receiving of the Torah, we have, instead of like this big revelation, you have now Hashem making a list of all the things that we have to do, all the details of all the things we have to do between each other, how we deal with our animals, with damages, with all kinds of things, marriage, how we, social interactions, and then it gets later to things like going up through festivals and all that kind of stuff. But it has to do with like a whole outpouring of the Torah's giving us guidelines of particular mitzvot. So what is the meaning of that? Why would it be that first you have the revelation of the deepest secrets of life in the form of the Ten Commandments and the experience of Hashem speaking to us out of the mountain, the whole nation? Then you have, the next parsha is tons of details. Lots and lots of mitzvahs and the details of them. So what's the connection? What do you guys think about that? What's the connection? Why is that the follow-up of the revelation at Har Sinai? Okay, so let's look in, so no one is coming up with anything. So let's look in Rabbi Yehuda here. That's what he says. The first piece here. Parshat Mishpatim, hi hemshech shel mabed Har Sinai, Matan Torah. The parsha of Mishpatim, of judgments, is a continuation of the situation, of the standing, of the experience of that we had at the Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and the receiving of the Torah, the giving of the Torah. Hachelek Hasheni Shel Matan Torah. This was the second part of receiving of the Torah. Yitro Mishpatim Heinaklal V'Pratim. Yitro and Mishpatim, Parsha Yitro where we received the Torah, and Mishpatim, which is the present Parsha, which is a whole list of many, many laws, explaining of many, many laws. This is the rule and the details. The big rule is the Ten Commandments, and the details is all the mitzvahs that come after it, as come out. V'yitro nimtzaha yesod. Aseret hadibrot ben Ramuza kol Torah kula. In Yitro is found the foundation of the whole Torah. The Ten Commandments, in them is hinted the whole Torah. Mitokach hitpartut agdola shel mitzvot b'parsha mishpatim. So out of that, after you have the giving over of the foundation, in which is hinted all the mitzvahs of the Torah, you have after that, you have the specification of many, many mitzvahs in Parshas Mishpatim. So Rabbi Yehuda has explained to us that these two parshot come together. Like in general, the parshot come down in pairs. That first there's the giving over of the general idea, and then there's the specific. So that's what's happening here also in a big way. You have the receiving of the Torah, the Ten Commandments, in the form of the Ten Commandments, and then you have outpouring of details. Look here at the note here. Ratzah Hashem yitbarach lashmiya l'Yisrael mepiv et aseret hadvarim. Hashem wanted to make known to the Jews from his mouth the Ten Commandments. K'dei shiyoru al advarim hakolalim sheyichuyev adam behem. They should teach us about the general things that a person is obligated in. So the Ten Commandments are the general rules of all of what we have to know. Going further, that's from the Sefer Karim, and now here's from Rashi. Kol sheish meot v'shalosh esrei mitzvot. All of the 613 mitzvot, biklal aseret hadibrot hein. They were included in the Ten Commandments. All the 16 mitzvahs were included in the Ten Commandments. Rabbeinu Sadia, Perish Bazharot, Sheyasad, Kol Dibur V'Dibur, Mitzvot Atuliyot Bo. Reb Tzadia Gaon, the famous Gaon Reb Tzadia, Rashi speaking about Reb Tzadia Gaon, he says he made a poem in which he explains how all the mitzvahs are contained within the 10. Right, so he explains all the different mitzvahs which are contained in each of the 10 commandments.
It's something like the 10 Commandments at HaRav, and then we have all the other 603 that are Toldot.
Are they avot? You could say that. It's sort of like that. Yeah, it's an interesting comparison. I mean, no one's saying those words avot for Toldot, but it is that idea. We're saying more. I would say it a different way, though. I would say maybe you could say it like that. What he's saying here is that they're kolalot, means they're contained. They contain all these details. So the first one is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Tosichem Eretz Mitzrayim, Hashem who brought you out of Egypt. So there's all the mitzvahs having to do with Amunah, which are spread out through the Torah, which are going to talk about this and you bring out the details. And each one of them has all the details which are connected to it. So the Ten Commandments were very, very major. That was the whole Torah summed up in the Ten Commandments, in a certain sense. Okay, and then what happens is it starts to unravel all the details that come out of them. So this is a very interesting type of concept. He's saying that that what happened at Har Sinai was this very big experience in the form of the Ten Commandments. This was the basis for our relationship with Hashem. In other words, he set out, the mitzvah of Munah, the mitzvah of not serving Avodah Zorah, not serving idols, the mitzvahs of keeping Shabbat, of honoring parents, all those different mitzvahs. So all of them have so much in them that when Hashem wanted to create this essential relationship between us and Him, so He told us in the form of the Ten Commandments. This was the essence of our relationship, and it contained in it so much nuances and so much depth. Right? So you have the Ten Commandments. It's like that's what you need to know to be in a relationship with Hashem. The Ten Commandments. That's the essence of a relationship. Now, before the Ten Commandments came out of Har Sinai, so people were a little bit lost. We don't know what we're doing here. How are we connected to our source? How do we relate to the source of everything? And the answer is, when the Ten Commandments came out of Har Sinai, it's teaching us, well, this is how. This is when you do this, when you do these 10 Commandments, so then you'll be deeply connected. Then you'll be a full human being who's connected with the source of where it comes from and what he has to be focused on. That's the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments are the most amazing thing. And the truth is, they're the essence of the relationship with us, with Hashem, and they've gotten out. And actually the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach, they're pretty much in there. Yeah. And so even for the nations also, this is the essence of the relationship, or part of it at least, is the essence of their relationship. So then what's the rest of the mitzvahs? Well, it's what's implied in there. It's the details. It's the playing out, the expanding, extending, so what happens? The relationship becomes constantly strengthened. As we go through every day and we're doing mitzvot, we're constantly strengthening this mitzvah, which is sort of defined by the 10 Commandments. That this relationship, which is defined by the 10 Commandments. All the mitzvahs are like bringing it down, bringing it out, bringing it into action. The very lofty category of the 10 Commandments. That's the concept here. It's, you could say sort of like when a person is giving a speech, so the first thing he's going to do is he's going to say the idea in general as clearly, philosophically as he could, and then he's going to start giving examples and giving more and more how it plays out, how it applies to the life. So in a certain sense, that's what happened here at Har Sinai and Mishpatim. You have Hashem speaking out like what it's all about, what's the key to our relationship. And these ideas, they're full of nuance and full of depth. And then after that, he tells us, I want you to study all these other mitzvot, and I want you to do them. And as you do that, you're going to be bringing this mitzvah down into your daily life, into your understanding, etc., more and more. So really the Maharal asks this question, why did you separate out 10 of the mitzvahs from the whole 613? They're all Hashem's one single unified Torah. But the answer is the 10 mitzvahs are the essence of the relationship. They have it all contained. They're all contained in that 10. Okay, that's what Yehuda is saying. Okay. Now let's look at this piece from Rav Kook. In the second paragraph of Bracha, it says like this. The Mishnah says, Amr B'Shuv ben Korcha, Lama kadma parshat Shema levahaya im Shema. Why did the parsha of Shema, the chapter of Shema, why does it come before the parsha of and will be if you will listen? So when we're saying Shema, we have 3 parshas to Shema. It's a mitzvah of Shema to have 3 parsha to it. The first parsha is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levav b'chol nafshecha, all that parsha, all that chapter. And then the second chapter is V'haya im Shemot tishmu, if you will listen to my mitzvot and you'll keep them, and then I'll give you the words, and etc. So the Mishnah asks, why is Parsha Shema first, that we say Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and the rest goes with that, before the mitzvah, the parsha which talks about keeping the mitzvahs in general, and etc. So why is it first? Lama kadma Parsha Shema levahayim Shemo El kadesh yekabel alav ol malchut shemayim techila. In order that, what?
We started a couple of...
Oh, very good. In order that you should accept on yourself the yoke of heaven first. In order to accept on yourself the yoke of heaven first, and afterwards he will accept on himself the yoke of mitzvot. So that's what the Mishnah says. In other words, first I want to accept on myself that I have this relationship with Hashem. Hashem is behind everything. Hashem is the source of everything. Hashem is one. And now I have to enter into this relationship, I have to love Hashem and try to serve Him. And then the second parsha is about all the mitzvot. How we have to accept on ourselves the whole Torah and all the mitzvot and try to do all of it. So the Mishnah asks, why is Shema, which is accepting Hashem's oneness and our essential relationship, why does that come first before accepting to do all the mitzvot? Why is that first? So the Gemara answers, because first you have to accept on yourself the yoke of heaven, and then accept on yourself the yoke of mitzvot. Okay, now Rav Kook asks a question. He says, now really, what was the question? What was the Gemara asking? Why did it ask, why should we do Shema first? Why is Shema before Vayim Shema? Of course it's first because it's first in the Torah. So why is it a question even? It makes sense that you should do it in order. So what was the Gemara's question? Why do we do Shema before V'hayam Shema? What was the Mishnah asking? Why did the Mishnah think, in other words, that maybe it should be the other way around? Since the order is Shema is first, V'hayam Shema is second. What's the possibility of being the other way around? Why should it be the other way around? So it must be there's some reason why we thought it was maybe should be the other way around. So what Rav Kook says, I'll tell you before I see it inside, the answer is that when you accept on yourself to do all the mitzvot, and you do all the mitzvot as much as you can, what happens is only then do you really have the ability to understand your relationship with Hashem. That's what brings out ability to get really close to Hashem, to understand what He really wants from us as we do the mitzvot, and we study the mitzvot and do the mitzvot. So having a theoretical relationship is not what we do. Our relationship is based on doing the mitzvot, what He said, and understanding what He wants from us through constant interaction with Him through His mitzvot. And so therefore it would make sense that V'hayam Shemo should be first. You should keep on yourself all the mitzvahs. You know, like someone said, like when someone comes to become, someone said this the other day, when someone comes to be, last week I think, to convert, right? He has to accept all the mitzvot. Because that's how he brings himself to the full relationship, by doing all the mitzvot and accepting all the mitzvot. So the same thing, the question here was, why don't we do that like this? First, we're accepting ourselves, our relationship. So first, let's do all the mitzvot. And then, through that, we're going to come to a deep connection and understanding of Hashem, of our relationship and what He wants from us. That was the question. Let me show you inside where he explains that. Kavar ha'iru meforshim, the commentators already explained. Shein tzarek tam lama kadma parshat Shema l'v'hayim Shema. We don't really need a reason why Shema should come before V'hayim Shema. Shekadma b'Torah, because behold, it was before it in the Torah. Shema comes first. Ele shaynira lefi siddur hativi. However, the reason why the question was that maybe we should put V'hayim Shema first is because it appeared according to the natural order, lakdim V'hayim Shema, that V'hayim Shema, the second parsha, should be first. Shetachlit hagavana mishma, because what's the intention of saying Shema? Hi lagia el shleimot hakarat Hashem, to come to a full recognition of Hashem. Ubazeh pashut she'einu yachol lavo im lo yargil atzmo techila b'mitzvot. This is very obvious, this is self-evident, that you can't come to a close knowledge of Hashem, relationship with Hashem, if you don't habituate yourself in mitzvot. Hamayashrot drachav shel adam, the mitzvot which straighten out the ways of a person, umataharot midotav v'deotav, and purify his character and his understanding and his thinking. So that's true. And he's quoting the Rambam over here, the Rav Kook. He's saying to really purify your thinking, to get away from your simplistic understanding of life, your impressions you picked up in the way of how things are supposed to be, or what's good, what's bad, to get beyond that into what the really deeper understanding of what Hashem is expects from us and what our relationship with Him is. We have to do the mitzvot. The mitzvot are what take us into the world of true understanding, and pick us above our various inclinations, which take us away from Hashem. So therefore, the doing of the mitzvahs, what? It's a heart, yeah. So therefore, the fulfillment of the mitzvahs is what's going to bring us to the fulfillment of the mitzvah of the Shema, which is to know Hashem, close to Hashem. So therefore, it should say the mitzvahs first, and then here is Real Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Now I understand. You know, why did it put Shema before V'hayim Shema? That's the question. So that's Rav Kook is explaining what the Mishnah's question was. So the Mishnah answers, because first we have to accept on ourselves the yoke of heaven, and then we accept on ourselves the yoke of mitzvot. So Rav Kook explains that answer. That's to have a perfect, to get to the higher level of perfection in your understanding, in your recognition of what Hashem wants. But the thing which is universally true for everyone is that first you have to accept in yourself the yoke of mitzvot. Because from the aspect of faith and the tradition, the transmission we have from the Avot and from all of our Jewish history, which would be the transmission of faith, and from the Torah itself, from the transmission of faith, that is the essence of our Amunah. Zeh yichol liot, gam yichol liot, kodem lekabbalat ol mitzvot. So Rav Kook says like this. So what's this first thing? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. You're right. That's not the full recognition of Hashem. Not yet. That's the basic recognition that comes from faith. This is passed down to us. Hashem is our God. Hashem runs the world. Hashem is one. We love Hashem with all of our heart and all of our soul. And we and we learn His Torah, and we put on tefillin, and we mezuzot, and all that. That's the basis, our expression of our amunah, of our faith, which we received, not because we accomplished it through our efforts. It's something it's in us, this basic amunah. It's passed down from generation to generation. It was revealed to the avot in the Torah. So it's passed down to us in the way of faith. So that's how you start. First of all, you have to accept on yourself your relationship with Hashem. And that's based on faith. Then after that comes the acceptance of all the mitzvahs and the doing of all the mitzvahs. And then you come to a higher level of faith, which is based on an understanding, a deeper understanding. So there's the basic faith, which is our tradition. Hear, O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's in our souls. It's passed down in our collective psychology that Hashem is our God. And we are here to serve Him. And so we're reaffirming that what we know on a deep level and what we receive from our traditions. The second part is accept on ourselves to do the mitzvot, which means as we do the mitzvot, we learn the mitzvot and we do the mitzvot, happens is the relationship becomes much deeper and much stronger, because through learning about the mitzvahs and doing the mitzvot, we're now internalizing that understanding, which is based originally on faith and tradition. And now, as we accept to do all the mitzvos, now it becomes something which we actually understand. And you come to the higher level of oneness, and appreciating Hashem's oneness. When you think about, for example, the difference between Christianity and Judaism, you see this is where it splits. One place where it splits is that the Christians, they want to take away the mitzvos. They say the main thing is to have the right attitude, to believe and to design your life to do the right thing,
Yeah, this is an aspect of the transition from taking like an ethno-religious tradition to a universalist religion. They get rid of the cultural particularities of ethno-religion and they make this universalist thing.
So very good. So Rav Kook says if you believe the loftiest ideals in the world, and you have a real strong feeling for very lofty truth, but the whole day you're doing sort of what comes natural to you. You're eating when you want, you're doing everything you want, and you're just living your day like a regular person. So what happens is, you have a psychology which pulls you away from these higher ideals. You'll be talking high ideals, but it's going to be hard to live them. But what we have is we have the high ideals. That's the 10 Commandments are contained in that very high ideals. And then we have a constant daily activity in which we're internalizing them through doing them, right? And we're studying them, we're doing them, the details of all these ideals, so they're brought down, we're understanding them more and more from out of all the details. In some ways, like, first you tell a person the picture, and then like if a picture is made of many points, we have to get the whole picture is made out of all the details. So there's 3 levels, and it's very interesting. There's a lot to talk about with this. There's 3 levels of relationship with Hashem. There's the first level, which is the level of faith, which is passed down to us, and we believe it because our souls naturally accept that that Hashem is the source of the world, and that we want to serve Him, and we should do the 10 Commandments, basically, And then comes then comes the deeper level of relationship, which is through doing all the mitzvahs, accepting to do them, learning them, and doing them. And then after that comes out the highest level, which is sort of a grasp of, it's a purification of our understanding, of our character, a closeness to Hashem, which we couldn't get if we wouldn't be doing all the mitzvahs and bring them all out. So it's this unfolding of Hashem's wisdom through the mitzvot. The 10 Commandments contain all the mitzvot. That's the key to the relationship. And the development of the relationship comes from all the mitzvot. Look at this next part in Rav Kook. This is also from Rav Kook. This is from Or Torah. When you are involved in Torah in simple matters, in simple mitzvot, for example, you're learning if you're not allowed to make a pit in the public domain, right? Let's say if you do, and a horse falls in someone's horse, you have to pay for it, right? If it's a deep pit, it's your fault. The same thing would apply. Let's say if you leave a stick there in the public domain and someone falls over it and gets hurt, so you have to pay. So that's simple. A simple law makes sense, right? But when you're learning these simple laws, you should see how the lofty light goes down in a very amazing way. Until the lofty light, and when Kook talks about light, he means the understanding of the Torah, the insight of the Torah. It comes down and it settles itself in the world of action. The intelligence, the divine intelligence, comes down and it fits into these actions. Tefillin and mitzvahs and like I said, like not doing damages. V'yarchiv levavo al yakar gedol hazeh va'oz ha'chaim halalu. You should expand your heart. Expand your heart when you're learning these details and we're doing these details to realize that they're really so much bigger than they seem. In other words, let's say we have a detail where let's think of a simple mitzvah d'oraita. Let's say you take a lulav, right, on sukkahs. You sit in a sukkah, you take a lulav. So it's
Don't you mean mitzvah d'oraisa?
Yeah, the rice, yeah. So you take the mitzvah. So it's a simple action, but you have to realize that what's happening is the divine intelligence in a lofty sense is coming down and fitting into this mitzvah. So you have all this implications inside the mitzvah. You should know that that this reduced experience, which involves words and letters and customs and actions and laws and scholarly discussion and theories, all this meet together with the loftier light of Hashem's intelligence coming down. In other words, Hashem's lofty ideas express themselves through all the details of all the mitzvahs. So, there's a Rambam that says like this. Then one of his letters, I think it's a Ger Teman, but he's talking about how, or maybe it's a different one, I don't remember exactly, but it's talking about the difference between the Jewish religion and the other religions. And he says like this, he says, we have mitzvot and they have mitzvot.
Really?
There's lots of mitzvot. Things you're supposed to do, like Muslim and Christians, there's things you should do as a Christian, as a Muslim. Just like we have a lot of mitzvot.
Like the 5 pillars of Islam.
Okay. So he says, the difference is, commandments.
There's a big difference because you could say the constitution of the religions, like the Christian and the others, has been made by man.
Oh.
But what we have, the Jews have, it's made by Hashem.
Right, very good.
This is the biggest difference.
Oh, so that's what Rambam explains, exactly.
Like what they believe that what they have is from God.
Oh. So what he says, the Rambam says like this, he says,
We can prove it because we received the Torah.
Okay, so he says they were imitating us, which they were. Their religions they're imitation of our religion. They said, and they did that on purpose. They want to sort of like demystify Judaism. Before Judaism, there's nothing like it. This whole world of all these commandments and the whole system we have, there's nothing. And then came Islam and Christianity, and sort of like wanted to devalue it by making, we also have that. So they have a whole system with rewards and punishment and mitzvos and all that kind of stuff. But it's rough. Well, the Rambam says like this. He says, very interesting. He says, what's the difference? The difference is that our mitzvot have endless depth. They have so much meaning in them. The more you study the mitzvot and the details of the mitzvot, the more you find wisdom in it and guidance for life and something which is, it's without end how profound each mitzvah is. Even each little mitzvah, the mitzvah lulav, mitzvah sukkah, there's so much wisdom in there. And there's so much depth and direct guidance for us. Whereas you look at the mitzvot of the Christianity, of Islam, you'll find that they don't have depth. They're just rituals. They're just pretty simple rituals, And they may have some meaning or some nice idea behind them, but they're not the same. He compares it like to a human being and a mannequin. Like you could look at a mannequin and you see, that looks like a person, but there's nothing inside him. Whereas a human being, you have the soul and the body, and you have all the thing inside it. So that's the difference between our mitzvot and the mitzvot of these new religions. So that's what Rav Kook is saying. That so what's in a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a reduction of the divine wisdom down into the mitzvah. So you do a simple mitzvah, you should get excited about it because you realize that it's not simple at all. It has so much wisdom in it. Look at this next piece here. I have a quote from the Haggadah Shel Pesach. Chacham Ma'u Omer. What does the Chacham say? Ma'edu v'chukim v'mishpatim asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu etchem. What does the Chacham say? What does the wise son say? What are all these testimonies and statutes and judgments and mitzvahs, all these things which Hashem commanded us? Afata Omer Lo. Also, you should say to him, you could say to him, you should say to him all the laws of the Pesach, the laws of Pesach. You don't eat after the Afikomen, after the Pesach Afikomen. You don't eat dessert after the Pesach. That's the last thing you eat at the Seder Shel Pesach. So Rav Kook, a little bit out what I saw in Rav Kook on this. So you have the four sons, right, asking the questions during the Seder Shel Pesach, right? So one of them is the wise son. So the wise son asks, what are all these mitzvahs and all these details? You know, the Seder Shel Pesach itself has tons of details. He's asking on that. He's asking on this whole Torah. Why do we have so many mitzvahs and so many details and so many statutes and Kookim and Edut and all these things going on? What's the point of it? I think what he's asking is that the wise son is asking, like, tell us how to live. Why doesn't the Torah just tell us philosophy? Why doesn't it tell us the most basic ethical concepts which we need? Why do we have so many mitzvot? And we have to study them with all the detail. There's all these tractates, 30-something tractates. There's with tons of mitzvot and tons of details on all the mitzvot, and we have to study them and know about them. And what's the point of all that? He's asking a very straightforward question, which anybody would ask. So the answer is, you tell them, you are sitting at the Pesach table, you tell them all the laws of Pesach. You start teaching the laws of Pesach. You tell them like this. You want to understand the essence of what Hashem wants us to know. The way you're going to do that is you're going to study the halachot. You're going to study the mitzvot and the details of the mitzvot. And after you do that, you're going to get the whole picture. Like, you want to know, what's Pesach about? What's the Korban Pesach mean? The answer is, well, I can't really tell you in abstraction. I could try. I could tell you a little bit. I could tell you different philosophies. I could tell you different ideas as far as that are inside it. And there's a lot to talk about there also. But if you really want to understand it, what you have to do is you first have to learn about the mitzvah. And, you know, where you eat it, when you eat it, who eats it, how much you eat, how it's cooked, all these kind of things. And all the details of the mitzvah. And after that, what's going to happen is you're going to get a feeling for the depth of the mitzvah, for what it really means. The meaning comes out of the details. And then you don't have to. Then you shouldn't eat after the Pesach. No, Afikomen means you're going to have this deep feeling, a deep understanding of what it means. So that's what we come to our understanding of Torah through doing the mitzvahs, learning the mitzvahs, doing the mitzvahs. And then what happens is that out of it emerges all these details of action and understanding, or the deeper implications. Yeah. What do you guys say? Any comments?
It's interesting, the parallel that if you are set in the mitzvah without Yirat Shamayim doesn't bring you anywhere.
Okay, that's interesting. So that's why first you have to, that explains the piece before. That explains why first you have to accept in yourself the all of heaven. And why you have to have amunah in general, you have to have faith in general. And then when you do the mitzvah, that brings you in closer, you know? So you have to that should be your intention.
And the third level is Kedusha?
The third level? Third level is understanding, is the full grasp. Because the grasp comes out of the particular mitzvahs and the doing the mitzvahs, then comes the deeper understanding until we have the deep relationship. I'll tell you something interesting from the Eish Kodesh, one of the famous Hasidic Rebbes, about learning. He talks about how you should learn the Iyun, in depth. When you're learning Torah, when you're learning Gemara, let's say. It's how you learn Gemara. So you learn the Gemara, you learn the page of Gemara with, and you go through, you get familiar with the Gemara and all the discussion back and forth, how it comes out. who says what, why they say it, all that. You try to master the page of Gemara, and then you learn the Rashi, and then you learn the Tosfot, And as you're doing that, it's going through every discussion of Gemara. And many times you'll find that there's something in the Rashi that doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. You don't know Rashi said it like that. If you were writing Rashi, you wouldn't have said that, And you also find there's something in the Tosfot. You're going to find usually that something in the Tosfot, the way he's explaining the Gemara, it also doesn't fit. He's saying something, I don't know why he said he skipped something, he said something wrong, I would have said it differently. You'll find that. So he says, you should know that that's where the depth is. That the Rashi and Tosfot, they're learning it very carefully, and they're asking very careful questions, because things never are surface in the Torah. There's always a deeper level, So when you start studying the mitzvot and the details of the mitzvot, and you see that Rashi is going to point you to the problem, and Rashi is going to tell you, that problem, thing that doesn't make simple sense, if you start plugging into that, you're going to find what's underlying the mitzvah. And the same thing with Tosfot. They're going to say there's always, in other words, when we're asking questions and we're trying to understand the details of the mitzvah, it's not because it's just like a technical issue. It's because the details reveal the deeper understanding. And as we start to keep the mitzvahs with their details and start to study the mitzvahs with their details, then that brings us behind it to what is the philosophical implications, what's really behind it, or the philosophical and halachic implications of the mitzvot. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to finish up. If anybody has questions, I'm open for questions.
Yeah, I have a question. So, we are studying from the conversations of Rav Yehuda Kook, son of Rav, the original.
Rav Mitzvah, yeah.
What is the reason we're studying from his son rather than his father?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's a really good question. I like that question. So the reason why I chose to do this is because, in general, Rav Kook was a very lofty thinker.
More general rather than more specific.
Rav Kook was a very lofty thinker. I'm not saying more general. No, I'm not saying that. Very high, very brilliant, high-minded, very brilliant, So the point is that for us to learn it, we should learn Rav Kook. We do learn Rav Kook, Rav Avraham Yitzchak Kook. But what happened was that Rav Tzvi Yehuda was a great teacher, and he was bringing down the ideas in more plain talk, for the whole generation. So therefore, it's advised that if you want to understand Rav Kook, you should also study Rav Tzvi Yehuda, because
his son is more easily digestible.
it's more easy. It's yes, exactly.
The senior Rav Kook, he talks a lot about higher ideas and stuff that's much more in depth, requires a lot of detail. If you look at the writings of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook, he talks very practical.
He talks like a modern discussion. He brings it down. He makes it sound.
So they both, the senior and the junior Rabbi, and they both complement each other.
So it brings it out.
Because
Rav Tzvi Yehuda was talking to the most advanced scholars, together with people who were just starting out to understand it. He sort of it contains everything,
So his son is the primer. Is that the primer, and then the father? That's more deeper.
That's the basis. The Rav Kook's ideas are the basis of what we're talking about, and Rav Tzvi Yehuda is the one who's bringing it into common terminology and sort of explaining it and bringing it down to us. The language is very, very useful for.
Study the writings of the son because we're beginners.
Well, no, not only that. No.
Well, how much Torah do we know? He knows a lot of Torah.
That's
they know a lot of Torah. The four of us know.
No, you're right, Hirsch. That's true.
Maybe you know more than
that is why. That's part of the reason. But the truth is that even for the advanced, we also need Rav Tzvi Yehuda, because it's a big body of knowledge, Rav Kook's knowledge. You need someone to guide you through it. So it's for the advanced and for the beginner both. It's really for both.
So what was his father's name? Rav
Avraham Yitzchak, Avraham Yitzchak.
Avraham Yitzchak.
HaKohen. Yeah. I will tell you something with Maral that also fits into this idea. That the Gemara says in one case, Gadol Halimud, we'll stop here after this. Gadol Halimud shemevi d'maisa. It's great learning. Learning the Torah is so great. Stop now.
Well,
what time is Mincha?
Well, Minchas, they start Ashrei at 1:15.
Okay, so one more minute. So we have another minute. So he says, the Gemara says in one place, it says, it's, what? Yes, so.
Actually, explaining about understanding the meanings of the
mitzvot and the Torah. Now, I think if there are 100 people who are learning Torah and practicing Torah, every one of them has a different way of understanding
Well, that's true, yes.
the mitzvot.
Right. Okay.
Then you have 100 people, you have 100 ways of understanding or conceiving the mitzvot. So
Right.
nobody's going to have the same
Right.
way of understanding.
Not fully, no, that's true. There'll be differences.
Should be funny.
But the point is that the point that I'm saying here. Let me recap. The main idea here is that when we got the 10 Commandments, we got in the 10 mitzvahs of the Torah, we had the essence of the whole Torah. It was all implied there, and so that was the basis of our relationship. If you have these 10 Commandments, you're already in this relationship with Hashem. But then, how do you deepen that relationship? How do you bring yourself into it all the way more and more, and develop yourself in this relationship? That's through the rest of the mitzvot, all the details. That's why Parshat Mishpatim comes down, because if not for all the details of the mitzvot and all the many, many mitzvot, then the 10 Commandments would stay sort of as a hint. We wouldn't know exactly how to relate to it and how to understand it. But see, all the things are implied in it. All the mitzvahs are implied in it. But then you have to spell out the mitzvah and do the mitzvahs, and then that's how we understand what's behind the whole thing. So it's very interesting. That's my main point, is that there's two parts of the Torah in a certain sense. There's the 10 Commandments, which is the basis of the Torah and contains the whole Torah. It's the essence of a relationship. And then there's the rest of the Torah, which is the development of the relationship and bringing out of our potential within that relationship. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you.
Abraham.